Good evening, everyone. This is the 1-minute warning before we will start. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our council meeting of September 11th, 2023. We are resuming in our evening session. I would like to just remind everyone and mention again that the formal public meeting for official plan amendment number 42 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2213 13780-520 Canada Inc., 265267 Hemlock Street and 8385 Hickory Street West, Ward 6, Central Columbia, which was scheduled to occur tonight, has been deferred to a later date, and we do not have that date yet. So anyone who's listening or anyone who's in the audience thinking that we would be dealing with that item tonight, we are not. I will request of council, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? I do have a declaration of conflict, and that is with item 12A, because I'm a member of the association. So at that time, I will be stepping out of the chair and turning it over to the mayor to continue with that item. Before we get to that, though, I would like to welcome our new Uptown Waterloo BIA Executive Director, J.S. Balaskathan. Sorry, J.S., I'm not saying your last name very well, to please come and say a few words to council. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor McCabe, city councillors, city officials. Good evening. My name is J.S. Balaskathan, and I started as the Uptown Business Improvement Area Executive Director August 8th. So it's been about a month. It's been great. It's been fantastic. Just wanted to attend this meeting to introduce myself and quickly say hello to all of you. I've lived in this community since 1997, and over the past 20 years, I've been sort of closer to Uptown. Absolutely love living here, and now being able to get to work for the BIA members, it's an honor for me. And so far, the city staff have been phenomenal in helping me, directing me, answering a ton of questions, and I'll have more with the city staff. I want to thank Councillor Wright for her help since I've started, for the direction and working together, and looking forward to working closely with you in the Uptown. Folks who saw my interview with Bill Jackson for Chronicle, in that interview I said, Uptown is open for everyone, and I sincerely meant that. So I'm going to work with my team, with the city staff, with the councillors, with the mayor to make Uptown the place to be, so we could continue to have the vibrancy we have in Uptown and do great things here in the square and in the Uptown neighborhood. Thank you, everyone, and have a great fall.
Great. Thank you, J.S., so much for joining us this evening. I know we all look forward to the many activities that the BIA plans for our city, and appreciate you welcoming everyone in the city to come Uptown Waterloo. Thank you very much. I will now turn it over to the mayor to take us to the staff reports.
Thank you, Councillor Hamner. So for the first staff report of the evening, it's 12A, Beechwood West 2 Homes Association Special Service Area Levy Vote Update. We'll turn this over to Natalia Chabal. Thanks, Natalia.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, and everyone present. This report and today's presentation, the report on the topic and today's presentations are brought to you as an update on the special service area levy vote that is being conducted within the geographic boundaries of Beechwood West 2 Homeowners Association. Before we proceed, I would like to introduce a couple of terms that you're probably used to, but they are understood a little bit different in the policy under which the current vote is being conducted. So neighborhood home associations, they are referred to as groups that have recreational facilities, and they have mandatory membership tied to the covenants present on the deeds, land deeds. Special Service Area Levy, or SAL. This is a process by which the city collects funds from those residing in defined geographic areas. These areas are originally subject to covenants by which direct and indirect costs are recovered through membership fees. The city clerk, in January 2023, the city clerk received a full application for the consideration of SEL in Beechwood West neighborhood. So this is the location. The association includes 129 homes plus the recreation facilities located at 131 Winchester Drive, and the area of the covenant includes Ainsworth Crescent, Barrington Lane, Drake Circle, Kingsford Place, and Winchester Drive. The facilities in question, you can see it enlarged on the map, includes a swimming pool and tennis court. How did the cell model come to existence? So in the 1970s and 1980s, developers built recreation facilities in the west side of Waterloo. And this consequently led to the formation of home associations. The properties within geographic boundaries of these associations were tied to these associations by covenants, and membership fees were recovered from the residents within the geographic boundaries. And through these fees, the annual operating and capital costs were recovered. Mainly these associations are located in the so-called Beechwood area, and two associations are Glasgow Heights 1 and Glasgow Heights 2. In early 2000s, these associations started to look at ways of sustainable funding of these recreation facilities because the covenants were about to expire in a few years later. So one of the home associations approached the city, and at the time, Recreation Services proposed a pilot cell program, which this program, the pilot was implemented in 2005, and it was formalized as a policy in 2017. The legislative authority for this program can be found in the Municipal Act Section 326 and associated Ontario regulations. So a municipality can establish a bylaw to recover a special service area levy. The Act and the regulations, they set forth parameters and requirements for the service to be provided, and it has to be a defined geographic area. The service has to be unique and cannot be to this area. It cannot be undertaken generally throughout the municipality, or it can be undertaken at different levels in a different manner in part of other parts of the municipality. The policy that I mentioned earlier, so just want to take you through some of the main points of the policy. In order for the association to launch the SAL program process, the association has to have 66% support of the membership, so in the form of a petition. The program can only be launched, the vote process can only be launched once all the covenants in the area have expired. The city does not accept applications after November 1st of the year leading to the election year. And in order for council to consider the passing of the bylaw and approving of the vote, 66% of those who voted must support SEL. And the process would include at least one public meeting, which we are having here today. A little bit of history on the vote. So the first vote was held in 2007 in Beechwood 2. So these are the most recent one, was held in 2019 in Beechwood West. So all these levy SEL programs were passed by an absolute majority in this neighborhood associations. So this is just a process in a nutshell. Specifically to Beechwood West 2, we are currently in the process of receiving ballots from homeowners within the geographic boundaries. The ballot count will occur on September 26th at 10 o'clock. For this, we invited representatives of the Home Association and some staff witnesses. And the final report will be brought to council on October 16th. If, with recommendations to pass, if the threshold of 66 ballots cast is met, or just an information report if the threshold is not passed. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Natalia. Council, do you have any questions about this presentation or about any of the information that was just presented? Seeing none, just like to say thank you, Natalia, and thanks to the volunteers in the home associations at Beechwood 2, as well as the other volunteers who run those associations across Beechwood. That's really important work that they do and really helpful for the city and for the residents. So thank you very much. So this is...
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. So this is, I just need a mover and a seconder to receive this report as information. Moved by Councillor Roach and seconded by Councillor Rowe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. So we'll welcome Councillor Hamner back.
Thank you, Mayor, very much. And that takes us to our next staff presentation, which is Town and Gown Committee, Waterloo Student Accommodations. And before we get going with the presentation, the Mayor has a few comments that she'd like to make.
Thank you. Through you, Councillor Hamner. Just wanted to make some very brief opening comments to kind of help scope and frame the presentation that Tanya and Chris are presenting. And one of the things that I think is really important about why we do this survey is because what gets measured gets managed. And I think that's part of the driving force behind why we do this. So this report provides much needed information to help our town and gown partners scope the issue and to focus on joint actions to help us find solutions. So the housing crisis is a national problem, and students are one more casualty of this issue. And there are certainly complexities in Waterloo that are unique, and in communities like Waterloo that have post-secondary institutions. This is going to require action by all of the town and gown partners, as well as other levels of government, in order to address this challenge. Students are a really important part of the city's complete communities. Waterloo wouldn't be Waterloo without our post-secondary institutions, the three of them. And we certainly wouldn't have the vibrant city that we have without what the institutions, the faculty, the staff, and the students all bring to our city and to our community. And so that's why Council and the City of Waterloo will continue to support not only the students, but the post-secondary institutions. So with this report, I'm particularly happy to see that there are some really important next steps around education and awareness and support, which includes helping students feel safe and secure once they do find housing. The city's work through our affordable housing strategy and our official plan continue as we will work in partnership to address housing across our community. We'll also continue the work that we've done in Northdale and in other near campus areas to encourage development, to encourage development and support students, as well as our post-secondary institutions. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate those comments, and I will welcome to the podium, we have Chris Reed, who is our chair of the Town and Gown Committee, and Tanya Keurig. Over to the two of you. Go ahead.
Thanks very much. We appreciate the opportunity to present to Council tonight and the introductory comments from the Mayor. As you all know, the Town and Gown Committee is an interagency committee of the city designed to enhance relationships, communications, and policies among universities, the college, students, city, the police, and the rest of our community. We're grateful that Councillor Rowe is our council liaison for the committee. And I'm really happy to be here tonight as the chair. My regular job at the University of Waterloo is as the Associate Provost Students. I've had the privilege of being part of the work at the Town and Gown Committee for a number of years, and tonight happy to introduce Tanya in a second here, who's really the star of the show and champions a lot of this work that the committee undertakes. Just before I hand it over to Tanya, though, I would say that this is an issue, student accommodations, that's been a priority for the Town and Gown Committee for well over a decade. Where students live in our community is vitally important to their success, their well-being, and as the Mayor said, students contribute a great deal to our local community. And so this is an issue that's really important to the committee, and as such we undertook through the committee's Student Accommodations Working Group the most recent effort to understand a little bit more and produce some data around student accommodations in our city. And as you can see, it's a significant undertaking. The report in the packet is pretty sizable. Tanya's going to try and present it in 8 minutes here or something. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to her and say thanks again.
Tanya, you have about 8.5 minutes. It's okay.
Thank you so much. Good evening, council, staff, members of the media, as well as the public. In the event that you haven't met me, my name is Tanya Keurig. I happen to be a senior policy planner here at the City of Waterloo. But this evening, I am pleased and honored to be here before you as the lead of the Student Accommodations Working Group, which has prepared this report. Before I provide some high-level highlights of the report, I wanted to preface the presentation by saying a few very important words, which echoes what the Mayor just recently said. And that is, as a committee, we greatly value students, their vibrancy, their contribution, and we recognize what a great value they are to the city, so much so that we truly hope many of them will really consider remaining here after they graduate. As Chair Reed has said, as a committee, we have long recognized the importance of good housing to the health, well-being, as well as academic success of students. And in that light, the committee's goal with this study has been to provide data that could help all stakeholders make informed decisions on their actions as it relates to student accommodations, noting that students are simply another casualty of the national housing crisis. They are not the cause. So let's dive into the report. As was noted, this is, we've been doing this work for about 10 years. This is our third report. And really the focus of the report is on three areas: student housing supply, demand, and the results of a survey. Why do we undertake this work? Well, it's because data and information on student accommodations is hard to come by. Although that's not surprising, considering legally there's no such thing as student accommodations, because under the laws of Canada and Ontario, students, similar to any other group, have the ability to reside in any dwelling type in any neighborhood, which makes the work and the report that the committee has done that much more amazing. So first, I'm going to talk about our analysis and findings in terms of our supply and demand analysis. We look at supply in terms of on and off campus. We also look at demand in terms of student tenants requiring accommodations while they are studying here. And what we can clearly see from up on the screen is that since our last report in 2017, the number of student tenants is outnumbering the accommodations we have. Now, I will highlight and note, you will see this is in red text, the word potential is used, there's a question mark and there's an asterisk. That has all been purposely included to highlight that there are certain data limitations which are outlined in the report, and I encourage everybody to review those because they do have an impact on the numbers. In addition, as a committee, we have been able to identify within current development applications as of the end of last year, 4,660 beds that will be potentially coming down the line and will be contributing to the supply. And that will help to contribute to what we have. And some of you may be aware, the city of Waterloo is known as the Canadian capital of off-campus purpose-built student housing. There's no other municipality that has done more to enable and facilitate the construction of student housing. And as a committee, we like to think that the student accommodation reports that we have produced have helped to inform and contribute to that. Now, one of the important things to note, it's not just students who are feeling the crunch and are being impacted. As the mayor noted, there is a national housing crisis that's impacting all demographics, and we can see that within Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation's annual rental market reports. And what they clearly show for our city is low vacancy and escalating rents, particularly for available and vacant units. In addition to the supply and demand analysis that we undertook, we also administered a survey to students. The importance being is to understanding their student housing expectations, satisfaction levels, and experiences. And we had a good response rate. Some of the findings to highlight and or explain and clarify, as in previous years, majority of the students said they were satisfied with their accommodations. Wanted to highlight here, we didn't define the word satisfied. It simply could mean that they were grateful for having a roof over their head. An important statistic for the city and city staff, 63% of students said that their off-campus living experience contributed to an improved sense of community belonging. However, some areas of concern, students increasingly have found it difficult to secure accommodations. Their living expenses are more than they expected. Average rent has almost doubled from what it was in the 2017 report. And for many, there's a lack of education and awareness in terms of the Residential Tenancies Act as well as rental licensing. In addition, new to the survey this year, we asked students to identify whether they had significantly been impacted by housing costs in the past year, noting that once again, we didn't define what significant meant. Of the students who responded to this question, 46% said they were. And these are the areas noting that students were able to select all that apply. And essentially what we see here is students are making trade-offs in terms of the accommodations that they are residing in and not necessarily meeting their needs. In other areas such as food or perhaps some utilities, some are provisionally accommodated, and some within the last year didn't even have that for the time being. So in terms of next steps as regards to the committee, we have identified 5 steps to carry forward this work based on the analysis that we have undertaken. And those 5 steps include 1, creating public awareness of the report, and the main way that we do that is actually by coming here tonight to present this to council. Number 2, sharing this information with the region and the area municipalities, as well as those municipalities we've identified that a significant number of their students are residing here, to share this information with them and facilitate awareness. 3, encourage the city as part of their current official plan review to review near-campus neighborhood capacity as well as opportunities for more attainable and affordable housing in line with the affordable housing strategy that Council approved earlier this year. 4, develop an understanding of the market conditions in the near-campus neighborhood, specifically in regards to what extent students are residing in student-dominated neighborhoods. And 5, this is a big one, continually develop collaborative education campaigns with all the institutions and the student associations. We recognize we have a new batch of student tenants coming every year, and what the survey has clearly shown is, to get information out there about the need for, if you're looking for housing, you need to start early. What the realities and actual costs of rents are. Getting them informed about their rights and responsibilities under the Residential Tenancies Act, making them aware of our rental licensing bylaw, as well as any additional supports perhaps that might be available. So that's my presentation. As noted, this is just a simple number of highlights from the report. As Chair Reid noted, there's a much more fulsome report. If you haven't had a chance to review it, please do it. There's a lot of great information, and I'm pleased at this time to take any comments or any questions that Council may have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Tanya. Excellent overview of the materials, and it was a very comprehensive report that was included in our package, so appreciate that. I will open it up now to Council for any questions. Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Thank you so much, Tanya and Chris, for that report. It is so important to understand what our students are experiencing and the housing that they are experiencing. Anyway, I have 2 points. I wanted to just ask if you could just expand a little bit on the gap between the 83.4% satisfied. You had mentioned about we don't really know what satisfied means, and then having to settle and not meeting needs was 61.5%. So is there an opportunity to look at that in more depth to understand sort of what satisfied, as you said, could mean, like just being happy to have any type of housing?
Through the chair, that's an excellent question. So in terms of, also I should have said in terms of next steps with the committee, one of the things that as the working group will be doing is looking at the survey and perhaps doing a deeper dive. And I must admit, this is one of the areas that has been brought up by the committee in terms of looking at the data to see whether or not specifically there's some information that could shed some greater light. As you clearly noted, the satisfaction response seems to be completely opposite to the other responses. And as I noted, unfortunately with the survey, we didn't define what satisfied meant, but what we suspect is that for a lot, it likely meant that they were just grateful that they were able to secure accommodations, recognizing the challenges being made. But all goes to say, yes, that's something that we will explore when we do a deeper dive to see if we can find any additional tidbits that we can share and inform that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My second point was about the breakdown of who participated in the survey. And there is an 82.7% domestic respondent majority. So what that tells me is we don't have the international student voice. And that's another piece to this, and I'm wondering about doing a deeper dive on that as well. From my experience and what I've heard from international students is they're very much less likely to come forward to share their experiences, which may then impact the response as well. So is there an opportunity for the international student voice?
Through the chair. Yes, so this is another item that we've added to the list as a working group to explore. On our end, we do have access to a research analyst at the University of Waterloo, and this is one of the areas that we've put out there in terms of do we have a significant number or a sufficient number of respondents so that we could do that deeper dive. So I can confirm for you it is on the list, and we truly hope that we will be able to do some analysis in that regard. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Rowe? Any further questions or comments from council? Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Hamner. I'll just pull this forward, so I got to rearrange my desk here. Okay, so I really appreciate this data-informed approach. I love this kind of stuff. But as Councillor Rowe was pointing out, we do have some real blind spots in here. And the things that really jumped out to me are the 10% precarious statistic that was shown in the data. And also, this is something that Smart Prosperity has pointed out, the latent demand where there's sort of like a hidden population of couch surfers or people living in overcrowding where if they had the opportunity, they would form their own household, but they cannot. And so this is showing up in the Canadian Rental Housing Index as well, which is based on StatCan data, so it's pretty recent, it's 2021. And I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity here to dig deeper into that index, because you can disaggregate it down to Waterloo. You could probably do it by postal code even, if you have a collaboration with a research institution, which obviously you do through Town and Gown. And then the other thing is, it just, you know, in terms of the recommendations, it would seem that we should be dashboarding this in some way as a city, just because of the evolving nature of the housing situation here. We do need some sort of central resource right now. If you're a student and you're finding yourself in Waterloo with precarious housing, you don't know your rights as a tenant, especially if you are new to Canada, it is really difficult to figure things out. We don't have a one-stop, one window, to borrow from some of our other policy work. We don't have a one-stop shop approach. And I would definitely like to see that from the City of Waterloo to support tenants, especially at a period where we're in crisis like this.
Through the chair, thank you so much for the comments and suggestions regarding your first item. It's definitely something that we can explore, so thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. And regards the second item, so I could see that perhaps as part of that fifth initiative that we have identified, I think it's part of that larger discussion of not just you know, the education, but where is that information housed, and if it's housed in a central location, you know, potentially on the city's website or something of that nature. Definitely as a committee, we're going to be having many conversations in this regard, and I will definitely share those suggestions, so thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Wright.
Just one follow-up on that too, and thanks for that response. On the quality of housing and how it speaks to the satisfaction point in the survey, the other thing that jumped out to me is that the Canadian Rental Housing Index also tracks that. And curiously, we're actually doing quite well. We're doing better than the Ontario average on the general state of repairs of rental housing. And again, this was 2021. That'll lag, obviously, over the years. But it's something to consider that if we want to dig into what are those determinants within that housing index, that might be a way to kind of dig down into that satisfaction and actually qualify it in some way.
Through the chair, thank you. Absolutely, we can definitely take a look at that. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Anything further? No. Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Tanya and Chris, and to everyone else on the Town and Gown Committee. I think it's really important work that you're doing in general, and appreciate the survey. And I appreciate, Councillor Wright, your questions there about the dashboard and disaggregating the data from the Canadian Housing Index. Thanks for those suggestions. Just had a question. I know the city in March we approved our affordable housing strategy. Are you aware of any other like bylaws or any other kind of zoning amendments or things like that we should be considering to help with things specifically to help with the student housing and getting more of that built? And I'm wondering where co-op housing fits into this as well, because I don't hear too much ever about co-op housing. But is there anything that we need to be thinking about just along those lines? And specifically, I think, for co-op housing.
Through the chair, fantastic question. In my opinion, I think that would fall under our next plan step number 3. So clearly, we have an official plan review that is going on, and I can confirm for you all, as I'm on that team, that we are looking at the capacity and what is being built within the near campus neighborhoods. So definitely something we can look at. And then, as noted, our affordable housing strategy has 81 action items, which includes items to support more capacity, to increase, affordable and attainable accommodations. And as part of that, that would include co-ops. And on our end, absolutely, we are very encouraging of co-ops. We hope to see more. We have some successful examples, for example, the WCRI co-op, and would absolutely love to get some more. In terms of, the work that we have done for us, a big piece of this is that awareness and education. And getting that information out there, because one of the things is, like with our last report, it showed a potential surplus, and some people kind of still have that in their minds. So for us, it was very important to get current information to start then to facilitate that discussion. In addition, some of the other items that I've actually heard recently, and I've heard it from a couple of people, is some of our student housing developers are having challenges securing financing. Not sure if maybe that's because, some people know us as the capital of purpose-built housing. Not sure if there's something else in regards to that. For us, though, we want to get the word out there is that we have significant demand. So, please fund these projects, and developers, please build the projects you have come in with a development application. We need you to build them. We need you to build them as soon as you get those approvals. And just to kind of summarize, this is a collective issue. It's going to take us collectively working together. We all have a role. I think that first piece, though, is that education and awareness. Thank you.
Anything further, Mayor? No. All right. Councillor Roach.
Thank you, Tanya and Chris. I saw on one of your slides that over the last 10 years, the amount of on-campus beds has not increased at all. Do you see any responsibility for our institutions like Laurier, Waterloo, Conestoga on building any more? Or are we the capital of purpose-built housing because they aren't carrying their fair share?
Through the chair. So as a committee, I'm going to preface this by saying, we collectively all have a role. So there's a role on campus, off campus. It's going to take all of us working together. In terms of the data and the scale that was presented, there has definitely been some net new on-campus bed construction. It just doesn't show based off of the high level that there has been. Definitely, we will encourage more. And we recently had some great news last week from the University of Waterloo, who shared that they have plans to build a new 500-bed residence, which is just fantastic. So what I would suggest to you all is that we all have a role, and it's going to take all of us on campus, off campus, public, private, everyone working together to tackle this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya.
Anything further, Councillor Roach? No, okay. Seeing no other questions, could I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Rowe, second by Councillor Wright. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Chris, for being with us this evening. All right, we'll switch gears just a little bit. We are moving into our public meetings, and please bear with me. I have a lot of things to read before we get to that part. This is an informal meeting to deal with official plan amendment number 48 and zoning bylaw amendment Z 2308, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14 Dietz Avenue North. There will be no decisions made tonight. Council and the public are seeing this application for the first time. Council is looking for feedback from interested parties with respect to this application. Tonight's comments will be taken into consideration in developing a staff position on this application, and a staff report will be considered by council during a formal public meeting at a future meeting date. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands and anyone who signs the registry at the back of the room, and please do so if you haven't already, will receive notice of the formal public meeting. Anybody who wants further notice of this application, including the formal public meeting and passage of any bylaws, should sign the appropriate registry located at on the desk at the rear of the council chambers. If there is more than one registry, please make sure you are signing the appropriate one, and I believe there's just one tonight. The planner, John Voss, will now provide a brief overview of the application. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Chair Hamner. Just making sure you can hear me okay? Perfect. Good evening, Mayor McCabe, members of council, city staff, and the public. As noted, this is the informal public meeting for official plan amendment number 48 and zone change application Z2308 for the lands at 6, 8, 10, 12, and 14 Dietz Ave North. The applicant, Copper Bay Homes, is being represented by Trevor Hawkins from MHBC, who will be doing a presentation following mine. As Councillor Hamner, or Chair Hamner has noted, the purpose of this meeting is to present the application and to listen to comments and concerns and to identify items for staff's review over the coming weeks. The subject property is on the east side of Dietz Avenue North between Sunshine Ave and Herb Street West. The property has an area of 0.25 hectares and is currently developed with 5 single detached homes. To the south are single detached dwellings, which are zoned to permit 6-story apartments. To the east is the Waterloo Heights Seniors Apartments, which is a 9 or 10-story apartment building. To the north is Luther Village on the park, which includes a variety of seniors housing styles. Also to the north is the Waterloo Memorial Recreation Complex and Waterloo Park. To the east is Westmount Place Plaza, which is primarily retail and office. Part of that property, adjacent to Dietz Ave North, is currently being redeveloped with a 12-story apartment building. I'll highlight that on the map here. So this is where the 12-story building is coming in. And the property owner is also proposing a 24-story building adjacent to Dietz in this location here, with the portion of the building fronting onto Dietz being the podium, but the tower will be located back here in this location here for reference. The proposed development is an apartment building containing 135 units, including a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, 14 of which will be affordable as defined by CMAH, and several townhouse-style units in the podium. The building will also contain 106 vehicle parking spaces and 84 bicycle parking spaces. The building will have a height of 13 stories, or approximately 40 meters, with an amenity room and terrace on the roof, which will comprise the 14th story. This is a concept plan of the site. Dietz Ave North is located at the bottom of the image. The driveway is located on the right side, closest to Herb Street West, and the main entrance to the building is located on the left side, closest to Sunshine. I'll highlight that here. I'll add some color to this image in order to help define the areas of the building further. The area colored purple is the main entrance and townhouse-style units within the podium. This will have a height of 3 stories and is similar to the building at 144 Park, 155 Caroline here in Uptown. The back half of the podium is the parking structure and is colored blue. The middle section, colored yellow, is the tower portion containing the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, as well as the amenity area on the roof. The applicant will speak more to the details of the building, how it's proposed to be used and laid out, and those sort of details. The official plan currently designates the property as mixed-use, medium-density residential with a maximum height of 20 meters and a maximum density of 450 bedrooms per hectare. The applicant is proposing to redesignate the property to mixed-use, medium-high density residential to increase the height to 40 meters and to increase the density to 900 bedrooms per hectare. The property is currently zoned residential mixed-use 20 or RMU 20 and parking area F, which requires a parking rate of 1.2 spaces per unit. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to RMU 40 and to add various site-specific amendments to accommodate the proposed building. Here's a list of the various zoning amendments required for the proposed building. Rather than reading each one, I'll show you each of them on the following slides. First proposal is to increase the tower length from 40 meters to 53 meters. Second is to increase the tower footprint from 1,000 square meters to 1,108 square meters. To reduce the landscaped open space from 30% of the property to 23% of the property. To reduce the tower setback along the south side from 11 meters to 8.3. That's over here on the right. To reduce the tower setback along the north side from 11 meters to 3 meters, and that's on this side. Second, to reduce the tower setback from the rear lot line adjacent to Waterloo Heights, this portion here, from 11 meters to 7.5 meters. To reduce the setback for the parking structure from 7.5 meters to 1.1, that's this portion here. Reduce the parking rate from 1.2 spaces per unit to 0.69 spaces per unit. Increase the density from 450 to 900 bedrooms per hectare. Reduce the tower setback from the front of the podium from 3 meters to 1.8 meters, specifically for the balconies to extend from the front of the building. So we can see how the balconies stick out. The main facade will continue to comply with the zoning though. And finally, to reduce the podium height from 10.5 meters to 9.1 meters. And part of that is due to the grades that are along the property because of the slope. The applicant has submitted various documents, reports, studies in support of their proposed development. These are available for access to the public on engagewr.ca, and I can provide a link if anyone needs it, they can contact me. Over the next several weeks, staff will review the submission and consider the merits of the requested amendments, along with comments from other agencies and from the public. We will then return to council in a couple of months with a final recommendation. This concludes my presentation, and I'm now available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, John, and it was appreciative to have the diagrams with the changes. It makes it a little bit easier to visualize what's actually being requested. Council, are there any questions of staff? And please remember that this is an informal public meeting and only questions of clarification may be asked. Council members should not express opinions at this time. Councilor Wright, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Hamner. I'm just wondering if you could describe for us what the cumulative impact is of the density on the traffic and the movement of vehicles through this little section. Just because we, as you mentioned in your intro, there is that building going in, Killam building on the corner of Dietz and Herb. And then you've got this new one being proposed tonight, which adds probably a total of several hundred new vehicles.
Sure. Through you, Councillor Hamner, to Councillor... Right, that's right. Sorry. The proposal is for 106 parking spaces, so that's about how many vehicles will be coming and going from the site throughout the days. The plan does have the driveway located on this side of the property in order to encourage vehicles to come in and enter the site as soon as possible, and also when they exit to come out towards Herb. There is potential that some might come around Sunshine and Roslyn Ave, because I think this is the signalized intersection where this one isn't. So coming out here, trying to turn left, it might be easier to go around. The applicant has submitted a traffic study to look at how vehicles will navigate in this area, to think about times of day when they'll be coming and going, as well as a parking study to look at the parking rate that's proposed. And so staff are currently reviewing that to see whether it's completely capturing the full picture, recognizing there's other developments as well, and those would have to be considered as part of the application.
Anything further, Councillor Wright? Not yet, okay. Any further questions of staff? Councillor Bodley?
Thank you, through you, Chair Hammer. I'm curious, and I might have further questions for the delegate there about the affordable housing provision that they've proposed there. Do we have any contractual or any sort of way of mandating that is actually going to happen as part of this site, or are we relying on the developers suggesting that that's what they intend to do?
Through your Chair Hamner to Councillor Bodley, a good question. It's something we've been struggling with on various other applications where affordable housing is proposed. I'll leave it to the applicant to speak more to the specifics of how they're proposing this one, but it is something that we're looking at. How do we secure it long term? The region has other mechanisms, but we're still figuring that out.
Anything further? No? Any other questions? Councillor Rowe?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, John. I just wanted to get some clarification on the shadow study. And I can refer this to Trevor when they come forward as well. But does that take into consideration the other proposed building that's going to come in to play in that area? Or is that strictly this building?
Through you, Chair Hamner, to Councillor Rowe, that one, I don't recall if the study did include phase 2 of Killam property, but it definitely included phase 1. We're looking at how does this building fit in the big picture of it. So at the late evening hours when all the buildings are casting shadows on each other, it's pretty irrelevant. But there are times of day when this building will still cast shadows on the surrounding properties. And so we have to think about how this building in particular will have that effect. But the study has been proposed, and we'll look to see the accuracy and the cumulative impact of how this one fits as part of the big picture.
Anything further, Councillor Rowe? Any other questions of staff at this time? Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I mentioned with the previous presentation about our affordable housing strategy. I'm just wondering how or if a proposal like this fits in to that strategy.
Through Chair Hamner to Mayor McCabe, that presentation was largely directed towards student housing.
Sorry, I just meant I'm referencing the affordable housing strategy twice. I don't think that this fits into student housing. I was just wondering if this project, does it fit, does it meet some of what we've laid out in the affordable housing strategy?
Different study,
Yeah.
That's correct. To further my comment, that study, the presentation that Tanya just made, did speak to some of the vacancy needs and the demand beyond just students. Our vacancy rate that was published in the presentation isn't just for students, but it's broader vacancy, recognizing we have a big demand for seniors, for families who are looking for multi-bedroom units and can't find such units throughout the city. So generally there's a large demand. The actual affordable housing study will guide broader themes, but will help influence the demand for putting in multi-bedroom units is one of those details that we'll be looking at. And I'll talk to Tanya further because she, I believe, was involved on that specific study as well, just to see how we can apply it to this scenario.
Thank you. And just to follow up, because I generally ask this of all these developments as they come forward, is particularly this one, given that it's so close to the uptown, is there a need for I realize you're meeting, I guess it's meeting the prescriptive need, but is there a need for so much parking?
The parking study has been completed and is being reviewed by our transportation staff, and they'll review to determine current demand, but also future demand as this area evolves. A lot of comments that I've received have raised concerns about demand for parking in the area, but also the potential for walkability, including connecting to Waterloo Park, the rec center, and proposing future connections in order to provide more pedestrian connections. So it's a topic that we'll be looking at closer to see the specific rate that they've requested. Is it too low? Is it too high? What is this number? And that'll be part of our review.
Anything further? Any further questions for staff, council? Okay. Thank you very much, John. We'll move on now to the delegates, and I will ask the registered delegates to come forward. Our first delegates are Trevor Hawkins and Tommy Rakic.
Thank you, Chair Hanmer. Tommy is here with me this evening on behalf of Copper Bay Homes in case council has any questions, but in the interest of using my 10 minutes, I felt it was best just to proceed with one delegation. And we're here this evening to present this application to council, exciting development with a number of much needed family-sized and affordable units in the uptown. The building you see in front of you is a rendering, so John had some elevations. This is a rendering prepared to showcase the development or show what it would look like in 3 dimensions. The building was designed by Edge Architects, and they were a key member of the project team as well. A little bit about Copper Bay Homes. They are a local builder. They live, Tommy, it being the prominent member of Copper Bay Homes, lives in the uptown. He's built a number of buildings in the uptown. He's built a number of low-rise buildings and mid-rise buildings, and he's looking to provide much-needed housing for those who also wish to live in the uptown, or those who may already live in the uptown but wish a different form of housing so they can stay in the community. With this particular project, there was a desire to work with CMHC to provide affordable housing units, and speaking to Councillor Bodley's question, the funding for the project is from CMHC, and as part of the funding arrangement for the project, there is a requirement to provide 10% of the units as affordable housing units. So it's tied to the financial arrangement for the project, which is funded by that agency. Tommy and Copper Bay Homes wanted to provide larger units, so the units that we don't see very often in the uptown projects, certainly multi-story projects, family-sized units, so units that would appeal to those with children, but also those who live in the neighborhood, who live in ground-related housing, and they're looking to stay in the neighborhood but occupy similar-sized units in an apartment-style format. Recognizing that the location of this particular development would appeal to families as well as seniors in a full range of demographic because of its location. It's close to shopping at Westmount Plaza, it's close to Waterloo Park, it's close to the rec complex, which has amenities for a wide range of ages, and it's within walking distance of the uptown. In terms of sustainability measures, Copper Bay Homes is targeting a 20% reduction of GHG emissions as compared with the building code. So they are looking at ways of reducing the carbon footprint of the building. And as you'll see later on in my slide, and you saw in John's picture, there was an element on top of the podium, the parking podium at the rear of the building, and that is planned as a community garden for the residents of the building. John touched on the location of the property, but just wanted to highlight a couple of things. The north side of the project actually abuts a driveway and a surface parking lot, so there isn't a dwelling or a building next to this particular property on the north side. And this particular piece here has both amenities for those who live in the building, but it's the roof of a parking structure as well, so there's some physical separation before you hit the actual face of the building, which is in brown here. And then John alluded to the building under construction here, as well as some of the buildings that are also proposed on the Westmount Plaza lands, as well as the permissions that they have to build further buildings on their lands. And then on both sides of Herb Street are lands that are zoned and planned for 6 stories. This particular slide just gives us a bit more context. So we see the transit routes. We have the I-Express routes that go towards the university. We have the transit along Herb Street with bus stops very close to this particular property. We have the boundaries of the major transit station areas in purple. So the Willis Way transit station area, this property is located within that transit station area, but it's also essentially right across the street from the Laurier Waterloo Park transit station area. So depending on where your ultimate destination was, you could walk to either of those ION transit platforms and catch a ride north or south. In terms of accessibility beyond that, you have your 2 rings on this particular slide that show us a 5 and 10 minute walking radius. So you can see you can access quite a number of things, including the uptown, including the park, the universities, some of the trails that go through the park and through the university if your destination is further to the north along Columbia Street, and then a great many amenities within the uptown or within a 10-minute walk as well. John's touched on a few elements of this. I just wanted to highlight one of the design considerations because of the context of the site and the parking lot and the driveway on the north side of this site was to shift the massing of the building to the north and position the driveway on the south side of the building. That way we create separation from the buildings that are either facing Dietz or facing Herb Street to the south, and we position the building closer to the parking lot where there's no building located on the north side. And then here we see the planned community resident garden on top of the podium. So the residents who live in the building to the east will have a view of that community garden on top of the parking structure, as well as the building, which is set back further. And then this darker line is the setback of the upper story. So the tower kind of steps back at the 12th floor to a narrower footprint. And then the townhomes facing Dietz Avenue each have their own individual entrances, and then John alluded to the main lobby entrance to the building at the north end of the site. Here's the rendering. So we see the lobby entrance at the north end. We see that Dietz Avenue slopes quite a bit from Herb Street down towards Sunshine. So the building, if you're standing on Dietz Avenue looking at it here, is actually, it looks like a 12-story building. The reason it is a 13-story building is because behind the townhomes, there's 2 floors of townhomes, but there's 3 floors of parking structure. And it's just because of the way you have what they call slanted slabs when you're building a parking structure with the ramps. So there's 3 stories of parking structure behind the 2 stories of townhomes. So technically it's a 13-story building because it has 13 floors if you're sort of standing on the north end and you're looking at the building, but if you're standing on Dietz Avenue, it looks like a 12-story building. Here's an image that shows the ground floor. The lobby itself is actually lower than the townhomes, which have their own entrances from Dietz. And we can see the townhomes are either 3-bedroom or 2 bedrooms, and they're 2-level townhomes. And the parking structure is completely hidden from the street and in behind the townhomes or the lobby. And then this shows the top of the parking structure as you get into the tower. So we have the resident garden on the level 3 podium, and then we see some of the larger units that are planned as part of this building. So significantly sized 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom units that would appeal to multi-person households. We see the stairwell that projects on the south side of the building. So the majority of the tower is a flat face, but there is a stairwell projection. Due to building code reasons, there's a stairwell needed in that location. And that speaks to one of the setback requirements we need. In terms of the official plan amendment, the intent or the request is to redesignate it to the same designation that applies across Dietz Avenue on the Westmount Plaza lands. So the Westmount Plaza lands have either medium-high 40 meters or high-density 81 meters, as John alluded to the building that was proposed here in this location. The lands north of here have either medium-high or medium in the orange, and then the rest of this property is surrounded by medium. So there's no low-density residential properties abutting this property. It's either surrounded by medium, medium-high, or high-density. It's located, like I alluded to earlier, in an area where there's a range of commercial uses, there's a range of institutional uses, so there's community amenities, there's schools, there's parks, and there's shopping, and there's ability to get to those things either cycling, walking, or via transit. Just to touch on some of the site-specific requests, so the rear yard setback is for the parking structure. So once you get above that third level, the tower recesses considerably to 7.5 meters or almost 10 meters for the upper floor. And then, as I indicated, we push the building further to the north. The majority of the tower, except for the stairwell, is 11 meters. It meets the tower separation setback. The request is only for this stairwell projection, where it decreases to just over 8 meters. And then John noted that the building itself meets the 3-meter step back, but there are balconies that project into that step back, and so the request is just for those 2 rows of balconies. And then, as I indicated, we pushed the building to the north because it abuts a driveway and parking lot, and that's the reason for the lesser step back in that location. In terms of landscape open space, the majority of the landscape open space is at the front of the site, where the public will experience it to the greatest degree, with a little bit less along the back where the parking structure is located. There were a number of studies. I won't go through all the details. The road, I've got 2 minutes left, so the road and traffic noise study, fairly typical warning clauses associated with road noise from Erb Street. There's no mitigation required for any of the surrounding buildings. There are municipal services to support the development. Stormwater is going to be controlled on the site through the use of underground containment system. In terms of the parking study, we have a study. I encourage council to review it. The request for parking is actually only to reduce the resident parking, not the visitor parking. So the visitor parking will comply with the bylaw, and there will be visitor parking for those who wish to visit those residents who live in the building. And there were a number of recommendations in the study which Copper Bay Homes intends to implement. With respect to traffic, we do have a trip generation letter. So although there are 106 parking spaces on the site, everyone doesn't come and go. Everyone doesn't leave the building, all 106 cars at 8 in the morning, and they don't all come back at 5. There are variations and different times of day when most people are coming and going. But the trip generation letter indicated that the intersection of Erb and Dietz could support the development. And I note that if you did travel around to Roslyn, it's a pedestrian activated signal, so it doesn't actually give you an inherent advantage if you did wish to turn left and head towards the uptown. The turn is the same if you took Dietz or Roslyn. In terms of wind, the project assessed the wind in the surrounding areas on the street, as well as the transit stop along Erb Street, and the wind conditions are suitable for the intended use. And just in summary, the project itself achieves a number of the community's objectives, a number of council's objectives, a number of the provincial and municipal planning objectives. It's intensifying within a major transit station area. It's providing family and affordable housing in an important area with access to multiple different alternative transportation modes. It provides purpose-built rentals, so it's not a condominium building, it's a purpose-built rental building. And it's located in an area that people can walk to get to their day-to-day needs, or they can cycle if they have a little bit further to go. It has regard for the context by positioning the building on the north side next to the driveway and parking lot, and it supports the concept within the regional official plan of a 15-minute neighborhood. Thank you. Oh, only 10 seconds over.
Only 10 seconds over, Trevor. Thank you very much. Very well done. Thank you for that. I will open it up to council if there are any questions of this delegate. Go ahead, Councillor Vasek.
Thanks, Trevor. I was just thinking about the mayor's question about parking, and then your slide about parking sparked my question. Do we have any data, either at the city or do you, from your work, know if any data exists about the parking rates that condos or purpose-built rentals, whatever, but like a condo-type building like this has asked for, and then what the utilization rate is? I'm just thinking of so many condos that I've been to, and there's tons of parking spots available in the end, so I'm just curious if we know the difference between the two.
Through you, Chair Hammer, there is a bit of data in the study where they did look at utilization rates, and they concluded that this was an appropriate rate for this particular building. I think council will find with a condominium building, the difference there is people will buy a parking space even though they may not use it because they feel it will positively impact their resale of the unit. Whereas with a rental building, if you're renting a unit in the building and you don't need a parking space, there's no need for you to get a parking space because you're not reselling the unit. So there is a difference between the two in that regard.
Can you just explain how it works then? So who owns the parking space in a purpose-built rental?
Well, the whole building and all the units is owned by the property owner. And so if you wish to have a parking space, you can request and pay for it separate from your unit.
Anything further, Councillor Bassick? Councillor Red, I think I saw your hand go up, and Councillor Bodley next.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Hamner. Mr. Hawkins, I'm just wondering if you can go back to that rendering of the initial building. You don't have a rendering of the back side of the building where it faces the Waterloo Heights, do you?
We don't have a rendering. There are elevations that we submitted that show all 4 sides of the building.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is because there's a 1 meter setback requested, and I think there's a wall that's 3 stories there to facilitate the parking. And so obviously the Waterloo Heights building is built in the tower in the park model, and if we were doing something that was a planned community where we had multiple towers, there would be sort of like common amenity space or some reference between them. And so I'm wondering like how that could be mitigated in landscaping in some way if there's no setback, like there's no green space accommodated there.
Through you, Chair Hammer, if the intent is to mitigate the visual impact of that facade, then there are architectural treatments that we can explore with staff to soften that visual. The community garden on the top will obviously have some landscaping and softening that will be visible for many of the residents. And then we would use fencing along the property line to at least shield the first floor. So you would effectively view, say, 2 floors of a parking structure that we would then look at tools to improve the visual.
And what kind of fencing would that be?
Well, we would, certainly like a solid board-on-board fence would be the most likely type of fencing we would use because it prevents see-through. It would effectively block the view.
Okay. And then my other question had to do with the energy management within the building. Just very conscious of our warm summers and the climate change effects that we're experiencing, especially in our cities, and the wildfire smoke that we had this summer too, which creates a lot of issues for HVAC systems in buildings. Is this building designed with like a heat or energy recovery ventilation, like an in-unit climate control, or is that not part of the energy profile?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Ray. We will be enhancing the building envelope to achieve a 20% reduction in greenhouse gases. Plus, we run HRVs and heat pumps in order to offset some of those energy demands. So, and as a practice, and one of our philosophies and policies is we definitely do look at alternative options for energies. Like we just did a building in Kitchener, a commercial building that has 0 greenhouse gases, and we're doing a geothermally drilled one in Kitchener as well. Unfortunately, we looked at it for this site, and we are not able to drill a geothermal system here.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one last question on the energy profile. Lots of balconies on this building, and I see how you're balancing between the having smaller windows but providing the balcony space. Do you have thermal breaks on those balconies if it's concrete slab?
Absolutely, we always have
Awesome.
thermal breaks in place
Okay,
with
thanks.
construction on the precast.
Anything further, Councillor Wright? No. Councillor Bodley, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair Hammer. Perhaps this ties into my affordable housing question, which I appreciate you providing a little bit more context there. I guess oftentimes when you are in here with other development applications, it is noted that 2 and 3 bedroom units are more expensive or more challenging to build. And I saw a host of 2 and 3 bedroom units here, in addition to the affordable units that are being proposed. So I'm curious if you can share with me maybe sort of how we're able to do that on this development, with an eye to what should I be asking about the next time you come here and there are no 2 and 3 bedroom units.
I'm not sure I want to answer that question, but I think with a rental building, and I've certainly been in front of council with other rental or buildings that are planned as rental buildings that have a greater portion of 2 and 3 bedroom units, certainly more 2 bedroom units. With a condominium building, the appetite to purchase a 3 bedroom unit is lesser because of the cost of the unit. When you have to purchase the unit and you're paying for the unit up front yourself, and the unit is 1,500 square feet, it's as much as a house in Eastbridge or Vista Hills. So there is a cost implication when it's a condominium and you're looking to purchase it versus a rental building where perhaps your mortgage at that house in Eastbridge and your rent for this particular unit are not dissimilar.
Okay, thank you for that. So more rental buildings, got it. So my question on the affordable housing piece, I'm curious if you can maybe elaborate a little bit more beyond your 10 minutes that are given to you about how that relationship with CMHC works, what the application process is like, and how long these are required to be affordable units.
Through you, Chair Hammer, I think perhaps I'll ask Tommy to answer that question, as he has far more details than I do.
Again, through you, Chair. So the affordable housing portion is geared to income. So CMHC publishes income data, and the rents for those affordable units cannot exceed 30% of the income, and it's been studied that that's one of the best metrics to peg affordable housing to, because it makes it affordable for the people who actually live in that location. And then it's a commitment on title through CMHC for a minimum of a 10-year commitment for those units.
Anything further, Councillor Bodley? Any further questions for this delegation? Go ahead, Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Trevor. I'm wondering if you can expand maybe just a little bit on the shadow study. I'm just looking at the diagram, so I wasn't clear if there was any consideration for the other phases, the second phase across the street, or if this is strictly this building.
I do have the shadow images actually after this, which I can walk you through a little bit. So it's a little bit hard to see, unfortunately, but this is the spring equinox, so that would be March 21st. And we can see that the availability of building massing from other proponents who haven't necessarily built the building is limited. So you have to work with what's publicly available. But this illustrates a 12-story building on Killam's property across the street and the shadows associated with it, which are distinct from the shadows associated with the proposed building. And we can see that in the morning, the building to the east has no shadow impact. It's not until 2 p.m. where the corner of that sort of parking deck, the roof of the parking deck, has a bit of shadow. And then as the sun sets earlier in the day, of course in March, the shadows start to fall across the site by 4 p.m. And we can see that the Killam project shadows cast across mostly our site or the properties on that face Herb Street. If there was another tower built here, I would expect that that developer would have to do their own shadow study, and they'd have to include their own 12-story building as well as this proposed building when they look at their shadows to see how their shadow of their proposed building would impact not only the lands on Dietz, but lands obviously to the north of their site as well. And if we look at June, so this is the summer equinox, you see basically it's not until 4 p.m. where you have the shadows just touching the edge of that parking structure, and then as the sun is starting to wind its way down the sky at 6 p.m. Again, still mostly in sunlight. So in the sort of summer season, there's very little shadow impact on those units that face towards the west. The fall will be similar to the spring. They often are in shadow studies, but again, we see it's not till 2 p.m. that we have the corner of the amenity, the rooftop of the parking structure impacted, and then as the sun sets in the evening, there are shadows that fall across those units. And then the one that's always the worst for any single detached or 25-story building or anything in between is the winter, of course, when it's least likely that there would be people outside, of course, but there are greater shadow impacts as the sun sets in the afternoon in the winter because it's so much lower in the sky.
That's helpful, thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Rowe? Are there any further questions for this delegation? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Trevor and Tommy, for your responses to our questions. I'd now like to ask Stephanie Paddock and Bradley Lucas to come to the podium. And if you wouldn't mind, if they are here, if you wouldn't mind just saying your name and your municipality of residence for the record.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Paddock. I live in Waterloo region. Sorry, Bradley Lucas was not able to attend today. I do apologize for his absence. I don't have a specific presentation for you. I've just prepared a speech to share. So I'm here today to represent the residents and the tenants of Waterloo Heights. As you know, it is primarily a seniors apartment building. We do also have limited non-senior tenants in select apartments and the stack style townhouses on the bottom 3 levels. So the news of this plan amendment and bylaw amendment was very concerning to our residents and tenants, as the 5 houses that will be replaced with the new apartment building share our property line. Currently, the area, as you know, is zoned for the RMU 20, and they are asking for RMU 40 with special permissions. You have seen a lot of these figures already, but I do think that the difference in numbers is important, so I am going to continue. The current zoning allows for a maximum building height of 20 meters or 6 stories, and a rear yard setback of 7.5 meters, with a maximum density of 450 bedrooms per hectare and a minimum landscape open space of 30%. With the RMU 40 zoning, they are allowed for a maximum building height of 40 meters and 12 stories, and they are asking special permission for the 13. A minimum rear yard setback of 7.5 meters, and they're asking for a special permission for 1.1 meters, which would be at the rear of their property, which abuts with ours, and that is essentially the width of a sidewalk separating their building from our property. The maximum density of 600 bedrooms per hectare, and they're asking for a special permission for 900 bedrooms per hectare, as well as the reduction in the landscape space from 30% to 23%. As you just saw with the shade study, this would put Waterloo Heights in quite a bit of shade in the early afternoon, blocking the sunlight from the seniors who chose to live on this side of the building specifically for the benefit of full all-day sun exposure. And as I'm sure you're aware, there are many studies that show the importance of sun exposure in seniors for their mental and overall health. And the wind study shows that at the corner where our property and their property would be closest, would create a wind tunnel. And this just happens to be where our residents board our courtesy shuttle bus, which then creates a potential fall risk for some of our less stable residents as they try to board the bus. In our area, there is already an issue with parking for community areas. So I wonder, with their special permission request of 0.69 spaces per dwelling unit, and that they will be charging for their parking, how long it will take before we find our parking spaces in the adjacent parking lot being taken up by their visitors, and that we will then have to be policing our parking. With increased height and decreased rear yard setback, there will be no privacy for our residents and tenants, especially with the third floor community garden, which will be on the same level as the patio spaces for our tenants in their townhouses. Sorry, very nervous
okay.
speaking in front of people.
You're doing well.
So I'd like to read to you an excerpt from the City of Waterloo website regarding zoning bylaws. The beginning is a little bit shortened up. The City of Waterloo is divided into zones for the purpose of ensuring the health, safety, welfare, adequate light and air, and the freedom from noise and fumes and dirt to reduce fire hazards to the inhabitants of the city and to regulate and restrict the locations of the residences, business, trades, industry yards, and open spaces. To allow the builder to rezone this location would go against the purpose of having zoning bylaws. While the residents and tenants of Waterloo Heights can appreciate the need for additional and affordable housing, we do not feel it is appropriate to allow amendments that will have a detrimental effect on the seniors and people who call this place home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paddock. Are there any questions, Council, of this delegate? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for your attendance today. I'd like to now call on Thomas Bartleman to come to the podium. If you could just please state your name and municipality of residence, and then you will have 10 minutes.
Hi, my name is Tom Bartleman, and I live That's better, thank you. My name's Tom Bartleman, and I live in the city of Waterloo. Okay. So let's get going here. Okay, there's a little agenda, broken it down. So I have a preamble here. So I went on the Engage website, downloaded the 22 reports, read them when I wasn't at work, and I believe, I'm not going to say all, but I believe all. I believe all the reports really, and actually your questions to other people have touched on that. They don't take into account the Killam development. There's, it's very easy to grab, you must already have it, the Killam development application, and then look at where all the buildings are. So. And so then in each of the specific reports, they don't take into account the Killam buildings. Pedestrian wind assessment, page 3, figure 1. There's a reference to Google Maps, just straight up incorrect. Like, I don't understand how that mistake was making. The parking lot at Westmount is full, but we've had COVID, so it's empty. So when you look at a photo, you should judge whether or not it's internally consistent. So the photo's dated wrong. Why? Just don't repeat a fact as taken. Think about it. Again, the wind assessment report actually shows buildings that aren't even there now. So what, I don't understand, is that, are we striving for accuracy, or are you just sort of phone it in? And also, again, the Killam building that isn't built isn't there. The wind assessment. All of the diagrams seem to take the measurements as if it's at head height, but as Stephanie mentioned, the gap from the corner of our place to the corner of the project in question, combined with the fact that, again, they want a 3-foot setback, creates a perfect funnel. And that funnel isn't just from ground to 6 feet. It's from ground to 9 stories high. So the wind isn't going to go up and over. The wind that enters from the south side is going to speed up as it's forced to exit the tiny gap at the north end between those two buildings. Shadow study. Winter solstice, 6 o'clock. Is the building in question made of glass? Because there's a a point on the diagram where there's not, the sun is shining through onto the grass at 170 Herb. So again, how is an easy error like that not caught? Okay. Parking. There's been a lot of talk about parking, 1.2, 0.69. What does it mean? Well, what happens when you don't get parking right? So the place, and that's what I'll call it, the place at 213 Herb Street West creates huge parking issues on Fridays. This is Dawson, 3 separate segments. It's full. There's got to be 60 to 80 cars, and even Dawson across Westmount is full of cars. This is Dietz on a Friday already. It is full, and that's Lourdes from our building at 170 up to the school, full. Now, the parking is so bad from the fallout at 213 Herb Street West. This car is on Sunshine, and as the Google map indicates, it's 1,300 feet away from where the person wants to go. The main point, and I really don't care about that, but I care about how it intersects with us. If you don't get this parking right now, this is happening, and you're going to be piling on people who want to live there but won't be able to park inside the building. Now, just to show you that it's, when I show you a picture of a street line with the cars, you may go, oh, well, those could be people visiting the people who actually live there. So this is what those streets looked like 7, 8 hours ago. There's nobody there. Okay, sorry, is that time? No.
No, you still
Sorry.
have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So, one of the parking studies in the report submitted is for 201 Herb Street West. What's the methodology? Well, they pick a day and they show up at 3 times. Why don't you just go there and ask them? Is there a difference? Because that difference matters. Well, when you do just go there and ask them, it's not they only need 32 spots. They don't need the 50, so therefore we should have less. They need 50 out of 51 spots. So basically, if it's that wildly off, shouldn't the other 2 also be equally wildly off? And couldn't you just figure that out by calling them? So, 0.69, that's a crazy number from 1.2. The Killam development got permission to go from 1.2 to 1.1. We're 1.1. Why do these people think they can get 0.69? That's just, and again, they don't pay the price if the wrong decision is made. Shadow studies. Some good questions have been asked. Let's just see. And again, so there's the view from my house. Why am I showing you this? So the top of I went over today to the development currently being made, and I asked them, how tall is that boom? Well, that boom is 150 feet tall. And when it's perpendicular to Dietz, it goes over the sidewalk and actually onto the property. Therefore, I can use the end of that boom to show you the height of what I'm going to actually be looking at for the rest of my life. Oh, and that ties me, I've got enough time, that ties me to a comment. I've been hearing this quote, view of garden. I'm really not going to see much garden. I'm going to see a brown slab. And you can, and so the left and right parts match up, I'd say, fairly closely with what the building is on those lots. Okay. These are from the Killam development. So I believe you actually already have this yourself. So maybe like cross-match when, if you're trying to make a decision, what's it gonna look like again? Well, again, I'm not a specialist. I don't know AutoCAD, I don't know Google SketchUp. I didn't have time to teach myself, but we know that the plans have been approved for those buildings, and now you want to plop this building right smack in the middle of the gap. So it's just not that building. I got a big wall of cement from the top of, from Herb all the way down to Lutherwood. Do I have enough time for that? This is what it used to look like. So, and those are the 3.5-story buildings that are gone. There's 8 units in each. So 8 units times 1.2 parking spots, 10 parking spots, matches what's there. The total area of those 2 apartment buildings is less than the area of the 5 houses. It isn't that the restriction is that you can only have 6 stories. It's all the rules knit together. You can't, so just from that alone, without changing any of the rules that are already in existence, that's the maximum of what could be there. You can only get more if you basically take off all the guardrails that are already there. So one of the things in asking questions of the planning department, there's supposed to be a transition. You're supposed to go from high to low so that it isn't an abrupt wall. So this is a statement written, and it's pulled from the official report from the Killam development to the city of Waterloo. So it talks about, we recognize that height transitions exist on the south side of Herb, and with special policies along Dietz Avenue North to ensure an appropriate transition in height from the subject lands to the east side of Dietz Avenue North. Do we all know who wrote that? That's a rhetorical question, MHBC. So they know it, but now they seem to be saying something opposite for this other developer. Again, this is from the application for 50 Westmount. In the end, there's going to be 1,500, all they want, averaged over the entire development, is an average of 200 bedrooms per hectare. The 6 Dietz wants 900. Does that seem like not jiving? And that's it. Oh, sorry, I've got 25 seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bartleman.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, and I'll open it up. Thank you for taking the time to put the presentation together. We do appreciate your input. Open it up to council. Any questions of this delegation? Councilor Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciated having that view from your apartment, because I think that's kind of what I've been missing in all of this, is understanding the relationship between these properties in the context of what we're trying to achieve here. There's obviously lots of trade-off. Just for clarification, are you in the townhouse portion of Waterloo Heights? You're on that base level?
I'm on the 3rd floor.
On the 3rd floor. Okay. Thank you. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Great. Thank you. Anything further, Councilor Wright? Any other questions, council? No? Mr. Bartleman, thank you again for being here this evening. I will now ask Ms. Rachel Jones to come to the podium, and if you could state your name, place of, city of residence, and you have 10 minutes also.
Hello, my name is Rachel Jones.
I am also nervous. This is my first time talking at council.
Just take your time. You're okay.
I will try not to go over 10 minutes. Like I said, I'm Rachel Jones. I'm the homeowner of 4 Dietz Avenue North, soon to be the only home on Dietz Avenue North. This home has been in my family for 30 years. We have bought it from my parents, and we've been raising our children in this house as well. Some of our concerns are, with all these people moving in, how's this going to affect the local school areas? The developments, are the teaching staff going to be affected by the mass of people that are coming in? We are also concerned with the traffic flow that other people have mentioned as well previously. The mosque on Friday nights, it is a nightmare to park there. We've had neighbors that have had to call up tow companies because they can't get out of their parking lots. They can't drive to or from, they're locked in. It is a big concern. We have been across from the Killam development. There is so much dust and debris in there constantly. Our garden in the front yard did not stand a chance. It's atrocious, really. We also live down the street from Lutherwood Village, and a lot of those people like to constantly walk down our street. It's the highlight of their day. Sometimes they do it more than once. I've gotten to know a lot of them, and they're like family to us. So seeing them struggle to walk down a street, they're now not walking on the opposite side of Killam because of all the construction. It's not really great for them to breathe in, and now they won't be able to walk down our side as well. We also have a family of deer that live and like to travel down our street, which is really crazy for seeing it in the town. There's a fox den just in the plaza too, like just in that little hill there. It's really gonna affect them as well. I think it should be concerned of the wildlife. We weren't informed. We were informed by concerned neighbors, and we had no idea about the apartment going up, let alone now they're trying to make it an even bigger apartment building. With Killam going up, this is gonna affect our house, shade, raising our children. We have a trampoline in the backyard. The parking, as you saw in all those lovely photos, is going to be directly over our backyard. Our family are very much outdoor people. We like to be outdoors all the time. It is going to affect our privacy. And with all the work that we've already had with construction, the vibrating, the power glitches, it's been a lot to endure, let alone having a new building come in with no one even informing us. But hearing it from a concerned neighbor was very upsetting. And it's just, yeah, sorry. We're also concerned about how this will affect the value of our house being surrounded by so many big buildings in the area, how it's going to affect our garden, how it's going to affect our yard. Will there be any point to have grass in our yard? Because it's going to be constantly in shade. So that pretty much touches base on a lot of our concerns. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. You did do very well getting all of your remarks out. I would encourage you to make sure that you've signed the registry at the back so that you can be kept informed as the process goes along. But please stay there for a moment as I ask council if there are any questions. Councilor Vasek, please go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you for your presentation. I don't have a question for you, but I have a question based on your presentation for the applicant. Is that okay? Better to do it another time?
It's fine. Well, go ahead right now.
Yeah, okay. Definitely signing the sheet back there is a good idea, but I guess I was just curious, are you planning other, beyond the distance that you have to inform people and the city has to inform people, are you planning additional community engagement and relationship building in the neighborhood as well? I'm asking of you, the applicant. It can be Trevor or it can be, I think your name starts with a T too, and I'm forgetting it.
Tommy.
Tommy. I was right. Yeah.
I've been coming here for 15 years, and I don't think I've ever been asked to come back up to the podium, so it's a bit unusual. Yeah. I think John and I already kind of spoke about the possibility of a neighborhood meeting and whether it's the form it takes, whether if we wanted to meet with, Rachel just on her own, if she's comfortable with that, or if there was another forum where there was an interest from more than just the immediate residents, we could do that for sure.
Okay, that's great, thanks. Because I appreciate how when it seems like you haven't been informed, even though we're not maybe required to inform within past a certain distance, it still feels bad to be outside of that distance lately and to not get heard from. So I hope you can build that relationship too, regardless of what happens moving forward.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Vasek? No. Any other questions, Council, for this delegation? Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, through you, Chair. It's a question based on some of your comments, and thank you for coming in tonight. I'm just concerned about, you said that some of the construction that's happening at Killam is causing, did you say some outages? I'm just wondering if that's something that we should, that
Yes, we've
staff are.
considered lots of issues, whether it's just been a lot of power glitches. You can feel vibrations through it. They start at early morning. They go even super late, depending. At one time, we had at least 20 big trucks going all the way down just to fill with cement. Cement trucks were lined up all the way down the street and all the way down. Parking is crazy because the bottom of the street is constantly being covered by the other construction workers for Killam. So yeah, it's just very hard to see anything there, and hard to raise children there when it's constantly finding so much debris everywhere, and there's smoke in the air constantly, and then yeah, we're having lots of glitches from it.
Okay, yeah, I can appreciate that living in an area that's under construction is challenging. I just wondered if there's anything maybe staff should follow up with the project manager around some of the concerns that you've raised.
Please and thank you.
We will leave that aside as a direction. I think lots of staff were writing things down, so we'll leave it at that. Are there any other questions for this delegation? Not seeing anything. Rachel, again, thank you very much for joining us this evening, and please do make sure that you have signed the registry at the back.
Thank you.
Our next registered delegation is Shiva Subramanian. Shiva, please come forward if you could state your name and municipality of residence for the record, and you too have 5 minutes.
This is on? All right.
It is on.
Right. Good evening, Chair and Councillors. My name is Shiva. I've been a proud resident of Waterloo for many years now. Just to make it clear, I have no connections whatsoever to any real estate business interests. I'm here today because we are facing an unprecedented housing crisis, and yet we are moving at a snail's pace when it comes to issuing permits and getting housing built because of red tape. So we saw the slide earlier from Tanya's presentation today. According to the CMHC October 2022 figures, Waterloo has a rental vacancy rate of 1.2%. This is dangerously low. As recent as 2018, the vacancy rate was a healthy 2.4%. In 2019, it was 2%. The current 1.2% indicates a severe shortage in rental housing supply, and our population and student numbers only continues to surge. When the next CMHC report drops this October, we might actually breach the 1% rental vacancy rate. This is not a metric that we should be proud of. I have personally witnessed the overcrowding and the inhumane living conditions spawned by this shortage. It's not very far away from City Hall. In apartments nearby, landlords are dividing living rooms using plywood and are cramming up to 6 residents in a 1-bed, 1-bath unit. This completely violates all building codes, fire safety codes. However, if reported, these vulnerable residents could end up homeless. This is not an isolated incident. This is becoming more and more common. Back in 2018, on rental websites like Kijiji or Facebook Marketplace, we used to ask for rent by the house. When in 2022, it was still being discussed by room. In 2023, we have reached a point where we are asking for rents by the bed. Soon, I fear we'll be asking for rent by the hour. This is shocking. This is nothing like the Waterloo that I know and I love. Many people in this room hardly get to see this side of Waterloo. If you do not believe me, you can check out both national and local media that have covered Waterloo's housing crisis thoroughly. We saw the Town and Gown Committee's estimates. There's a shortage of almost 5,000 student beds. It enraged me to read comments such as, if apartments are built, students would be living in these apartments and not families. Students are human beings too, and they deserve fair and equitable access to housing. They should not be treated as transient second-class citizens. This proposed development on Dietz Avenue is a step in the right direction. It provides much needed density close to uptown, to the universities, to jobs, and to public transit. The 2 and 3 bedroom units are suitable for young professionals and families, promoting sustainable growth while limiting sprawl. Ideally, I would have loved to see a co-op housing built here, but we know the city does not have the time and resources to do so now. So we could settle for the affordable rental housing units with rent geared to income levels. We desperately need the city to augment density and affordability. Approving density is a great way to preserve the integrity of our valuable farmlands, wetlands, and to hold the countryside line. Building the full 13 floors instead of the permitted 6 not only addresses the city's housing shortage a little bit, but it also increases the city's tax base organically. I currently live on the lower floor of a high-rise apartment building. My living room and bedroom is completely visible from the street as well as the neighboring buildings, compromising my privacy. But I still consider myself fortunate to have a roof over my head when so many in our community do not. And I say, if somebody asks me in a survey, I would say that I'm satisfied with the housing situation just because I'm housed. The very building that I live in faced very similar opposition in this very same room, but is now home to thousands of people because of the leadership shown by the mayor and the council back in the day. If the council had listened to NIMBYs, I would not be housed today. We have already compromised human dignity in the city of Waterloo by subjecting our residents to living conditions that are comparable to the third world. If we do not act decisively now, overcrowding and hazardous living conditions will only become worse. This will affect the most vulnerable people in our community, like seniors on fixed incomes, students, low-income earners, people with disabilities, and new immigrants. So I ask you sincerely, is this the direction that we want Waterloo to move in? We talk about community well-being. True community well-being starts with access to affordable housing for everyone in the community. I strongly urge the council to approve more dense housing as long as there is no danger to life and limb. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shiva. You have done an amazing job weaving probably every single item we've talked about this evening into a 4-minute presentation. Well done, well done.
Thank you.
Well done. I'll turn it to council. Are there any questions for Shiva? Go ahead, Councillor Rowe.
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Shiva. You did touch on a couple of things, so I just wanted to go back to your point about people that are living in conditions that are not acceptable. So in your experience, are they international students? Are they graduates? From your experience and talking to people in the community?
So the cases that I mostly know of are international students, but I also do know a lot of graduates and people who are like working, who have just had a hard time finding like homes if they have to like rent, and especially with rent control not in place for units after 2018. Just if like we know a lot of renovations are also happening in the region, just finding new house for any cost, right? Like you have kids and you can't find daycare in one area and you want to move to another area just because there are daycare availabilities. It's a severe financial burden. So I do know of cases, but the most deplorable housing conditions are definitely more international students.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to make a comment, just as we had mentioned with the Town and Gown survey, that from my experience, the international students don't come forward to share that because they are marginalized as it is, and then they are fearful of losing the housing that they have and then the repercussions of that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I would love nothing more than to like report these people and stop this from happening. But for that to happen, we need to have more housing, safe housing that these people can be moved into before we could like actually get. I really don't want to put people who are already under a lot of stress, and I don't want to be the reason to go and report people and make them homeless.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions from council for the delegation? Go ahead, Mayor.
Hi, thank you, through you, Chair. I just, I know you had made some references, Shiva, about, red tape and things like that. I just wanted to ensure that you realize that to date, just in 2003 alone, we've had applications come in for about 11,000 housing units, and our planning staff and our planning team are very much under I was under the gun, I've got to learn not to say that, are working really hard to process these, and so we are certainly doing all we can through the municipality and through our staff to process these applications and to ask the right questions and make sure they're projects that, I think fit within our community. But yeah, there's 11,000 housing units that have already come in just in 2013 alone. Once we approve them, of course, then it's up to our partners in the development community to build those, and that's in some cases what we're waiting to have happen. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that. Sorry, I said 2003. I meant 2023. We've had 11,000 housing units. I just passed a note. Sorry about that. I'm going back in time. In 2023, we've had applications for 11,000 housing units come into the city. So we are working, I would say, at a feverish pace to process those. And again, the development community is the next step once these approvals are in place. But thank you for coming in. I just wanted to be clear on that point.
Yeah, thank you so much for the information, and thank you so much to the city, to the council, and to the staff. I know we are all working very hard, and this is not a problem that will disappear overnight, and we are all taking small steps that we can do to solve this. And hopefully, I hope to be back in some meeting and talk about smaller problems in the future and not talk about the housing crisis.
Thank you. I'll remind council that we are in an informal meeting, and I have given a little bit of latitude because of the presentation from the delegation, but any further questions of clarification from this delegation regarding the informal? Not seeing any. Shiva, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd now like to ask if there's anyone else present this evening who wishes to speak to this particular application. If you do, please come to the podium, state your name and place and municipality of residence, and you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening. I have lived at
Excuse me, could you just state your name and municipality of residence?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm Pauline Campbell, and I've lived at Waterloo Heights apartment buildings for the last 34 years. So I have seen a lot of changes in this area. It's a lovely place to live. I'd like to address some of the remarks that were made by Mr. Rakic when he was interviewed for an article in the KW Record. He describes his proposed development as responsible growth. Apart from asking for double the number of permitted bedrooms and a reduction in parking, he would also like to, and I quote, tweak a few other planning rules. What arrogance. He says he would rather build something that is needed for the market. Very noble of him. I agree, we do need lots of housing. I'm not against building houses for people who need them. But can I suggest he find a site for his 13-story building that is zoned appropriately? 6 to 14 Dietz Avenue North is not it, and he was quite aware of that when he bought it. While canvassing the local community, I found that my neighbours are vehemently opposed to this application and shocked that it's even being discussed as a possibility. He goes on to say, and I quote, "We firmly believe the quality of life we can create," end quote. What on earth does that mean? I would like Mr. Rakic to understand that the residents living in this community had a very good quality of life, which is sadly being eroded each day as the 6-tower development on urban Dietz rises slowly into view. Many good family homes were torn down on Irv Street, plus dozens of mature trees axed. We live now with the noise of trucks roaring down Irv Street, clouds of cement dust covering a huge area, the noise of construction machinery, and not to mention the permanent daylight from the lights atop the crane, flooding over the neighborhood disturbing the sleep of not only the humans, but also the nocturnal animals and birds. To now allow another building site on the east side of Dietz is unfathomable. And I suggest, Mr. Reikic, that your development would certainly not, quote, create quality of life. Quite the contrary. I implore the Council to listen to your constituents and vote no to this amendment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. If you could stay at the podium just for a moment, I'll just see if there are any questions from council for this delegation. Questions? Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other individuals present this evening that would like to speak to this particular application? Okay, not seeing any. If there are no more formal delegations, this informal public meeting is now concluded. Staff will review the issues and provide further reporting to council at a later date. And again, thank you to those in attendance this evening on this particular issue. I'd like to remind everyone that the formal meeting that was originally scheduled for this evening, Official Plan Amendment number 42 and Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application Z 2213 13780520 Canada Inc., 265, 267 Hemlock Street and 8385 Hickory Street West, Ward 6, which was scheduled, has been postponed and will be scheduled for a later date. Moving us along, council, consideration of notice of motion, there are none. Just got to turn my pages here. We do have a notice of motion, and I'll turn to Councillor Vasek for any comments you'd like to make about the notice. We are not dealing with the motion this evening, it's just a notice of motion.
Yes, thank you. I'll have more comments next week to introduce it, but I did want to note that there is, I have amended it myself since first putting out the notice of motion, and I just wanted to speak to why, so there's a bit more extra context. The motion is advocating for a guaranteed livable basic income, and I wanted to keep it really clean like that initially, and so I had made a conscious decision not to include OW and ODSP in it. But after some conversation and watching the regional council meeting and being prompted by some others with good reason, I have included some advocacy to also increase Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program. And why I wanted to keep it clean was because philosophically I just believe we shouldn't have ODSP and OW. We should just have a basic income, no strings attached. No one should have to go in and ask and prove their worth for a very low amount of money. So my vision is that guaranteed livable basic income is continues to prove its success as it has, which I'll go into a little bit more next time. But that's just a little bit of background for where the change comes. And then, so the advocacy at the end, therefore be it resolved, if you wouldn't mind moving it down. And the whereases are lifted directly from Councillor Wolf's motion at the region of Waterloo. And the therefore be it resolved just speaks to that sort of philosophical belief that I have that we need to increase OW and ODSP because people have very practical needs right now that are not being met as our cost of living increases, but that ultimately the vision, at least from my perspective, is that we should have a no strings attached benefit. And I also just wanted to note that because OW and ODSP are not under our jurisdiction as a lower tier municipality, if any of you have any questions that are more specific to the operational aspect of OW and ODSP, to maybe reach out to me or to Tim Anderson in advance, so we might be able to reach out to our regional counterparts to answer some of those questions that we might not have in the immediate next week, because we don't have jurisdiction. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that additional context, Councillor Vasek, and as we discussed, we will be debating it in more detail at our next meeting, so thank you very much. Communication and correspondence, we have none. Unfinished business, we have none. Are there any questions, Council of Staff? Not seeing any. I do know that there is one piece of new business. Mayor, I will turn to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much through you, Chair Hamner. I just wanted to make a brief statement about the Strong Mayors legislation and my position on this, and because I wanted to share that with council and staff and our community. So as you know, the provincial government has passed legislation that extends new and different powers to mayors to a growing number of municipalities. And since it was first announced, we've continued to learn more about this legislation. And our clerk is working to continue to update us on this legislation, and we'll have a report in October. Previously in council, I had stated that I didn't intend to use these powers, and I delegated them back, what existed at the time, back to Tim Anderson, our CAO. I delegated back the authority and the responsibility that he previously had, and those decisions are posted on our website. The next pressing decision regarding these strong mayor powers is about the budget, as this legislation enables mayors to create their own budgets. So in thinking about this and thinking more generally about the legislation, I thought it fair to let council staff, and particularly staff in our finance department, and the community know where I stand with respect to these powers. And for many reasons, my position hasn't changed from a few months ago, and I have decided that I will not use these powers. I do not believe these powers and this legislation supports nor advances democracy, the work of our municipality, nor do I believe using them is fair or respectful to council, to staff, and to the community that we collectively serve. I understand that the stated purpose for the extension of these powers was to enable the building of more homes faster. However, in Waterloo, using strong mayor powers are not needed in order to advance the approval of housing developments. As an example, as I was just saying to one of the delegates, that since the beginning of 2023, there are over 11,000 new housing proposals that we've received this year alone. So, and Waterloo has a pledge to build 16,000 housing units by 2031. So we are very much on track for that. So council and staff, after consultation with the community and with developers council and staff after consultation with the community and developers who build after the approvals and building permits are in place. And after that, after those approvals are in place, it's up to the development community to put shovels in the ground as soon as they possibly can. So council and city are working very hard, and our planning staff in particular, with our community partners to build the housing units that we know are needed. And I believe that doing this does not require the use of strong mayor powers. I believe that municipal council works best through discussion, research, collaboration, and compromise when necessary. And I hope that this sets a precedence for the next mayor and council in Waterloo to demonstrate that a successful municipality can and will continue to work well without needing to use these strong mayor powers. So thank you for allowing me to provide that clarity.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's appreciated to have the clarity given the issues that are coming before us, and knowing that we will continue to work representing the residents of the city of Waterloo and work collaboratively together to come up with the best decisions for the residents that we serve. So very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Any other items of new business, council? Councillor Vasek.
I can't go through them all. There's too many. September's so busy. There's 18,000 events this month. So two notable things. The Clay and Glass Gallery celebrated their 30th anniversary on the weekend, and they had some daytime activities, which maybe you can speak to a bit better, Mary Lou, but I attended the gala on Saturday night, and it's just such a beautiful space to be in, and they had crafts to do, and they had the original board chair there, whose name is totally escaping me, Anne something. Sorry, I didn't mean that respectfully. It's just my mind's totally gone blank. And then just across the street, arts and culture-wise, the Tulip, the Button Factory is having their Tulip fundraiser. So you guys all know this, but I'm just getting it into the record now. It's $15 for 24 tulip bulbs. And I learned from my neighbor, this is gross, but if you put a little bit of your hair, just cut a little bit of hair and put it in with your tulip bulbs, the squirrels apparently do not get it. So anyways, hot tip. God, there was so much. Bookfest was in Uptown Waterloo, and it was so well attended. People love it. It was great. And then KW Famous hosted their art hop, which was all across Kitchener, Waterloo. Like, Uptown was really activated. Not to take your thunder, Councillor Wright. I was just doing a lot of things this weekend. And then, last one, Rook, and one Ward 5 resident, former employee here, Betty Ann Keller, was having like a little arts sale at her house with a friend who makes jewelry who used to live here. So I got these really beautiful earrings. So just lots of vibrancy in arts and culture, and just like people are so happy to be out and spending time with each other again. So that might be our first step in like repairing relationships so that we can tackle some of our very scary world problems.
Thank you, Councillor Vassick. Any other new business? Councillor Rowe.
Oh, I just wanted to follow up with what Councillor Vassick was saying about the clay and glass. So they also had the daytime family craft time, which was fantastic. I took my son, and it was really nice to see that people from out of town were coming and it's their first time visiting the Clay and Glass Gallery. And sometimes I think that people don't realize it's a national gallery here in Waterloo, and it is so worth visiting. So that was really exciting. I also just wanted to mention that it was such a great summer in Ward 6 with the Beechwood produce stand every Wednesday, and they have wrapped up for the season, and they every year donate their money to Centennial and Keatsway public schools as well as local charities. So that was another successful year for them. And they also, through their summer camp program, developed the permanent art to put on their fence along the pathway through Beechwood with an artist from the neighborhood. And it was such an incredibly amazing collaborative effort of people in the neighborhood that had certain skills or talents, and they all came together. So they had people that were doing the woodwork, the artist that was leading, volunteers painting. It was really fantastic. So I thought that was worth mentioning. And the last thing was the Waterloo Fest Uptown Student Welcome, which was fantastic. Really great turnout and excellent effort by the staff, because it was really great.
Terrific.
Thank you.
I think the neighborhood activities will be music to the ears of our neighborhood team. A lot of the initiatives that have gone on through the summer were funded through initiatives that's supported by staff. So great.
Thank you for saying that, because it was the neighborhood group that helped with the artwork along the Beechwood path.
Very good. Any other items of new business, Council? Not seeing anything. We have bylaws to enact. Can I turn to my left? Thank you, Councillor Bodiley. Who would like to second our amendments? The mayor. Thank you, Mayor. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Can I have a motion for adjournment? Councillor Wright. Thank you. Second, Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? We are adjourned.